The stars burned cold above the scorched plains of Argal. 6. Indifferent to the struggles of those crawling beneath their ancient light. Dust storms twisted in the distance, coating the horizon in rust-colored haze, while distant artillery fire echoed like thunder swallowed by the wind. Among the shattered remnants of what had once been a frontier mining colony, a lone figure lay prone, shrouded in a second skin of synthetic moss and netted camouflage. To an untrained eye, he was part of the rubble, another broken machine left behind by war. But Kai was no relic. He was a weapon honed by solitude and necessity. He adjusted the dials on his scope with silent precision, breath slow and measured. The ridgeline ahead was crawling with targets. Alien officers in sleek black armor, their heads crested with bioluminescent ridges that shimmered faintly even in daylight. Croc's commanders, at least 3 of them, flanked by lesser Narum enforcers, hulking brutes with crude energy glaives and no sense of subtlety. Kai's finger rested lightly on the trigger, but he didn't squeeze. Not yet. Not until the tallest one stepped into range. The Galactic War had raged for 20 years, spanning hundreds of star systems, devouring planets like Vargal, 6-1 after another. Humanity, once a burgeoning interstellar force, had been battered into fragments. The Unified Galactic Legion, UGL, still waved its banners, still spoke of victories and alliances, but on planets like this, far from any supply line or high command, all that remained were ghosts. Kai was one of them. A lone sniper left behind after the 3rd collapse, presumed dead, forgotten by command, but not by his enemies. He exhaled as the Croc's officer took another step forward. The scope beeped once, wind correction calculated. The trigger pulled with a whisper of inevitability. The bullet tore through the alien skull, dropping the commander mid-step. Panic exploded among the Crocs and Narum. One began shouting into a communicator. Another ducked behind a twisted or processor. They didn't know where the shot had come from. That was the way Kai liked it. Ghost didn't need credit. He crawled backward, already relocating. Never shoot twice from the same spot. It was a lesson carved into him by years of attrition. 10 meters south, under the remains of a collapsed power silo, he set up again, watching as the enemy tried to regain control. 2 of the Narum had broken formation and started scanning the high ground. Clumsy. Predictable. He ignored them. The real prize was the 2nd Croc's officer, now barking orders and holding what looked like a data core. Command unit. Intel source. The kind of target that changed supply routes, not just body counts. Another breath. Another shot. The officer dropped headless. Then came the laughter. It rolled across the ridge in a low, guttural rhythm. Not from panic or fear, but something else. Mockery. A new figure stepped into view, tall and imposing, wearing a cloak that shimmered like oil and water. This one didn't duck or hide. It walked with casual arrogance, weapon holstered shoulders back. A galactic elite. Possibly a shadow general, or worse. One of the hybrid tacticians the UGL reports had always speculated about, but never confirmed. Kai narrowed his eyes. The figure knelt beside the fallen officer, examined the wound, and turned its head slowly, directly toward Kai's position. It couldn't see him. He was sure of it, yet it raised a hand and pointed. Moments later, a distant hum began to rise from the eastern cliffs. Kai turned his scope. 3 aerial drones, sleek and silent, lifted into the sky, their wings crackling with anti-grav energy. Not standard Croc's tech. Human design, UGL grade, maybe even Earth manufactured. That made no sense. He packed up fast, blending back into the terrain. He needed distance. The enemy had changed. Something new had entered the war. By nightfall, Kai was deep within Sector Theta 9, moving through collapsed tunnels and abandoned habitation domes. The stars above were sharp again, the atmosphere briefly clear. He set up a passive scanner and cooked a ration pack over a low-heat flame, eyes always on the dark. The laughter haunted him. It hadn't been blind bravado. That alien knew something. Something Kai didn't. He reviewed his data logs from the day, scanning the elite's face through multiple filters. Nothing matched. No known Croc's commanders, no Narum defectors. But there, etched faintly into the cloak's hem, was a symbol. Circular. Interlocking triangles. He froze. It was Terran. Not standard military. Not corporate. Old. Obscure. He'd seen it only once before, on the badge of a Black Ops commander who disappeared after the Earth Accord collapsed. A man rumored to have defected. The implications tightened his chest. The enemy wasn't just laughing at a lone sniper. They were laughing because they recognized him. They knew who he was. And that meant the war had changed shape. He powered down the scanner and buried the embers of his meal. It was time to move again, deeper into the southern ruins, where interference fields made scanning impossible. He had to get word out. But who was left to tell? A chirp from his comm link, barely audible, startled him. The line was supposed to be dead. He accessed it, hand ready on his pistol. Sniper 1, a voice crackled. Female. Human. Tired. If you're alive, I need you to listen. They're hunting you. Not because of what you did. Because of what you know. This war. It isn't what we were told. Kai stiffened. Identify yourself. The voice paused. I'm like you. Discarded. I escaped from a deep cell. They're merging units, Terran and Crocs. Controlled by a third faction. You're not fighting a war anymore. You're part of an experiment. Then static. No coordinates. No call sign. Nothing. Kai sat in silence, the wind rattling through fractured metal beams above him. He'd spent years accepting his isolation. The last sniper of a forgotten war, surviving out of spite and instinct. But now someone else was out there. Someone who had answers. Someone who might understand the weight he carried. And worse still, someone else might already be watching. The idea didn't scare him. It anchored him. He had a purpose again. Kai slid his rifle back into its sheath, shoulders rolling with a new tension. If what the voice said was true, then he wasn't just surviving anymore. He was the crack in their foundation, and he was about to make it widen. Snow whispered beneath Kai's boots as he descended into the valley before dawn. Light hadn't yet touched the horizon, and the forest sat in a frozen hush, blanketed in shadow and frost. A thin wind whistled through the skeletal trees, carrying with it the scent of ozone and scorched earth, signs of distant firefights that had left their mark. Kai moved like mist, his ghillie suit woven with patches of local flora, its texture crusted with frozen dew. He was a shadow among stillness, a ghost in an alien land. 3 clicks east. A Crocs command post had been identified by orbital scans, its heat signature buried in the ground like a coiled serpent. UGL strategists dismissed it as a minor outpost. Kai disagreed. The pattern of movement, the flux in comm frequencies, the sudden drop in enemy patrols. It all suggested something bigger. No one listened, so he didn't wait for permission. He set out alone. He crept up a ridge overlooking a frozen ravine. The trees here black with burn marks and scorched bark. The perfect vantage point. He lay prone beneath a twisted root system, breath steady, pulse slow, and leveled his rifle. Through the scope, the world snapped into intimate detail. Thermal outlines, twitches of movement, the lazy arc of a scout's headlamp. 3 Crocs soldiers guarded a cave-mouth entrance. 2 stood rigid, scanning, while the third, bulkier, more decorated, spoke into a throat mic. The commander, not high-ranking but connected. Kai studied him. Every movement was efficient. Purposeful. This one directed others. He adjusted his scope, dialed wind compensation, and slowed his breath. Exhale. The trigger broke like a whispered promise. A second later, the Crocs commander crumpled backward with a neat exit wound through the crown of his skull. The guards froze. One screamed. The other fired blindly into the woods. Kai was already moving, shifting 4 meters to his right beneath a snowbank, keeping low. He peered through the scope again. The panicking soldier tried to drag the body inside. His exposed shoulder lifted. Crack. The second shot snapped his arm like splintered bone, driving him to the ground. Blood sizzled on the snow. A third figure bolted for cover inside the cave. Kai let him go. He tapped his comms once. Target down. Static. Then a voice. Lieutenant Avu, cautious. Sergeant, what's your position? Ridge east of grid 6. Crocs command post is live. A pause. Then understood. He knew Avu would pass the intel up the chain, credit someone else, maybe claim it came from aerial recon. That was fine. Kai didn't need credit. He needed impact. Back at base, he cleaned his rifle in silence. His fingers moved with mechanical grace, each motion ingrained by habit. Around him, soldiers murmured in clusters, casting glances. Word was spreading. No one laughed anymore. Not openly. A Drex officer approached during mess shift, uncharacteristically quiet. "You were on your grid 6? He asked. Kai nodded. 2 enemy patrols vanished. No bodies recovered. Just noise and then nothing. Kai took a spoonful of nutrient paste and didn't answer. The Drex hesitated, then asked, "You were trained to do this?" Kai wiped his hands on a cloth. "We learned how to disappear. Then we learned how to make others do the same." The Drex nodded slowly, as if translating that into tactical terms he could understand. Kai returned to the trees the next night, this time farther north, near the rust-colored cliffs that marked enemy territory. He climbed a frost-covered pine, nested into the canopy, and watched. Hours passed. A group of Narum warlocks emerged from the canyon, their translucent skin pulsing with bioluminescence. They moved in synchronized lines, psionic shields flickering faintly around them. Difficult targets. Their minds could sense pressure waves before the shot reached them. Kai had studied them. He knew their reaction time. He knew their blind spots. He waited until the second-to-last warlock tilted his head at a specific angle, just enough to expose the crown. The shot was surgical. The Narum dropped, his shield bursting like shattered glass. Before the others could react, a second bullet ripped through another. The remaining warlocks scattered, shields fully raised, lashing out with psionic bursts toward imagined threats. Kai was gone, already descending the tree, vanishing into the ice. Later, a recovered transmission crackled through intercepted channels. Unknown ballistic projectile. Origin point unclear. We're being hunted. A week passed. Enemy patrols grew paranoid. Units refused to cross open terrain. Commanders doubled escort numbers. Entire formations shifted their routes to avoid elevated positions. Even orbital units began questioning ground tactics. And all of it, every pivot, every fear, stemmed from one man. Kai watched from afar as the enemy adapted. That pleased him. Fear was a tool. It slowed movements. It disrupted strategy. It invited mistakes. He adjusted his tactics in response. Less lethal, more psychological. One night, he left a shell casing on a blood-stained rock, inscribed with an alien sigil known only to enemy intelligence. Another time, he tapped into a Croc's channel and played back one of their own commander's last screams on loop. No message, just memory. The enemy was unraveling. Meanwhile, back at command, though Vask reviewed field footage again. Sniper kills had become common. No thermal signatures. No energy trails. All mechanical. All impossible to trace. Avu stood to the side, arms crossed. "This is the human?" Though Vask asked. "Yes, General." Confirmed. Though Vask coiled his long body, contemplative. "One man. He's not just killing. He's reshaping the battlefield." Though Vask looked back at the screen. A Croc's heavy collapse from shot no one saw. The footage paused. No muzzle flash. No smoke. Just stillness. "What's his doctrine?" the general asked. Avu hesitated. Patience. Precision. Disbelief. Though Vask's eyes narrowed. How does one train disbelief? Avu had no answer. In the barracks, soldiers started speaking about the sniper in hushed tones. Stories flourished. They called him the Frostmark, the Whisperer, Ghost Eye. Some swore he could see through metal. Others believed he bent time. Kai ignored all. Myths serve its own purpose. On his next deployment, he positioned himself above a frozen lake where 2 enemy supply convoys were expected to intersect. Hours passed. Then motion. A Croc's hover truck drifted into view, slow and wide, unaware. Kai exhaled, lined up the driver's silhouette. One shot. The vehicle jerked sideways and plowed into a rock outcrop, exploding in a controlled burst. The second vehicle stopped mid-path. Kai fired again, this time not to kill, but to strike the front tire. The blast sent the truck skidding. Inside, panic. No one dared exit. No one knew where death waited. He didn't fire again. He simply left. The message had been delivered. Back at base, Avo approached him for the first time with something like respect. "They're calling you a disruption node," he said, offering a data slate. "Enemy analytics show increased hesitation metrics. We believe you're responsible." Kai looked at the slate. Charts. Kill ratios. Psychological effect indices. He handed it back. "Doesn't matter what they call it, as long as they keep flinching." Avo gave a tight nod. "Keep them flinching, Sergeant." That night, as the sky bled with aurora and the wind picked up across the tundra, Kai climbed once more into the trees, rifle in hand, breath calm. He looked through the scope, not at a target yet, but at the terrain, the way the enemy moved differently now. The way fear made them stumble where once they marched proud. Each step they took now, they had to wonder, was the human watching? He was. The storm rolled in without warning. Thick clouds choked the moonlight as icy wind battered the trees. Branches creaked like bones under pressure, and fine snow sliced sideways in sheets. Visibility dropped to a handful of meters, and the forest, once Kai's sanctuary, turned against him. He crouched beneath a fractured overhang, rifle slung tight to his chest, and adjusted his thermal visor. The storm scrambled heat signatures, warping everything into a mess of blurred halos. Even sound betrayed him now. The howl of wind distorted direction, and every creak could have been a footstep or falling ice. He waited, still as stone. For the first time in weeks, Kai wasn't hunting. He was being hunted. It had begun 2 days prior. An elite enemy unit had entered the theater, one unlike the other Crocs or Narum grunts. This group had no identifiers, no comm chatter, no support formations. They moved in silence, surgically, and always in teams of 3. They didn't follow known patrol patterns. They tracked anomalies, like the kind Kai left behind. He'd first noticed their presence after an unusually well-defended officer ambush. He'd taken a shot, as usual, perfect kill. But 30 minutes later, 3 of them had appeared, tall, cloaked in distortion fields, moving with eerie coordination. They didn't examine the body. They traced the terrain. They studied where a sniper would have been. He'd barely escaped. Now they were closing in. He could feel it in the shifts of the wind, the unnatural hush that fell before movement. The predators had turned their eyes toward the ghost. Kai checked his position. Ridge Gamma, 6 clicks from the nearest UGL outpost. Retreat wasn't an option. He was cut off. But he wasn't cornered. Not yet. He moved low, crawling beneath snow-laden roots, angling toward higher ground. Each movement was calculated. Slow. Measured. No tracks. No heat trail. He used terrain to erase his presence. The storm, though cruel, became an ally. It drowned footsteps. It masked his scent. It erased the smallest disturbances. But it couldn't hide him forever. A flash of movement. He froze. There, to the east, one of them. Humanoid shape, shifting cloak, no visible weapon. But it stood with deliberate poise, scanning. Kai lowered his breathing. His heart beat steady, like a drum, counting seconds. The figure knelt, scanned the ground. Finger to shell, casing from a kill Kai had made 3 days earlier. Its helmet shifted toward the exact perch Kai had used. Not luck. Not instinct. Method. These weren't soldiers. They were counter-snipers. Kai eased his rifle up, just enough to peer through the scope. The figure twitched. Moved to cover. Gone. He didn't fire. Too late. The others would be flanking already. This was no longer about kills. It was survival. He retreated uphill, 1 meter at a time, keeping to shadow. Every movement left a potential clue. Every breath risked betrayal. For hours he played the game of ghosts. Advance, vanish, observe. The storm raged, time dissolved, and the forest became a war of nerves. Near midnight, he found a crevasse, a thin crack between 2 ice walls. He slipped inside, breath catching as his back scraped the narrow passage. The cold here was brutal, biting through his suit like needles. But it offered concealment. He waited. 20 minutes later, one of them passed above, footsteps light, almost respectful. They were good. Too good. But they still didn't understand the full scope of what they were hunting. Kai had been forged in forests, deserts, ruins, places where satellites failed and drone feeds lied. He didn't need sensors. He listened to dirt, wind, and the silence between. He marked their spacing, 20 meters apart. Classic triangle formation. Clean sweep pattern. Too clean. He pulled a cord from his pouch. Low-tech, almost laughably simple. A trip line, laced with shock resonance dust. Invisible in snow. Silent. Deadly. He rigged the exit to the crevasse. If they found the gap and tried to force entry, they'd trigger it. He needed to thin their number. One mistake. That's all it would take. He relocated again, this time climbing into the upper branches of a skeletal fir. The wind howled harder now, nearly dislodging him, but it also covered the creaks of his climb. From above, he spotted the second agent, crouched near a thicket, scanning with a prism lens. A living heat map, capable of detecting breath signatures. Kai narrowed his eyes. The wind surged, a momentary lull in the noise. He fired. The bullet punched through the agent's hood, splintering skull and lens. No sound, just a drop. One down. The forest shifted. The others had heard, or sensed it. Kai relocated immediately, bounding from tree to tree, a blur among the flurries. He could feel the third agent now. Too close. He was being driven, herded toward an ambush point. He stopped, listened. Then he understood. The tripwire hadn't gone off. They knew. They hadn't followed his tracks. They predicted his fallback. They were adapting. Kai shifted direction instantly, veering toward the canyon edge where the old wrecks of a downed cargo skiff rusted beneath the snow. There, he had an idea. He reached the site in minutes, sliding down the slope toward twisted metal. It wasn't a defensible position, not truly, but it was unpredictable, unstable, and that meant opportunity. He ducked inside the wreck, navigating tight, broken hallways. The wall still smelled faintly of scorched circuitry. He took cover behind an engine coil and waited. Minutes passed. Then, footsteps. Delicate, precise. The third agent entered. She was tall, clad in dark matte armor with no markings. Her weapon, a compact rail pistol, was held close, scanning corners. Her helmet tilted with each step, reading pressure, analyzing airflow. She was close now. Kai pulled a micro mirror from his pouch and angled it under the coil. Her feet, 2 meters. Closer. He had one chance. He raised his sidearm, not the rifle, and took a breath. As she turned the corner, he fired twice. The first shot grazed her shoulder. The second struck her helmet at an angle, cracking the visor. She staggered. Kai lunged from cover, closing the distance. She struck back fast, an elbow that cracked against his ribs, a knee to the thigh. But he drove her into the wall, disarmed her, and shoved her helmet back. He froze. Under the cracked visor, a human face stared back at him. She gasped, blood running from her temple, eyes wide with something between fear and confusion. "You're not," she began. But then her body went limp. Kai stepped back, breath ragged. A human, not from his world. Different armor, different insignia, but unmistakably earthborn. Somehow, some way, the enemy had humans too. He checked her vitals. Faint. Alive. He carried her out of the wreck, away from the others. He had to retreat. Had to report this. The battlefield was no longer simple. Not just aliens versus the last human sniper. This war had shifted. He slipped back into the forest, clutching her gear, heart pounding. Snow fell heavier now, but the storm inside him had just begun. Kai crouched in the hollow of an uprooted tree, his breath forming delicate clouds that vanished into the stillness of pre-dawn. The woman lay beside him, wrapped in his thermal cloak, her face pale and bruised. She hadn't spoken since regaining consciousness 2 hours ago. Her eyes flickered with awareness but not trust. That was fair. He hadn't offered any. The forest was quieter now. The elite squad that had hunted him was no longer in pursuit. One dead, one wounded, and the third likely retreating or regrouping. But Kai knew the silence was temporary. Something larger was moving beneath the surface. He'd seen it in the insignia on her suit. The pattern was a modified variant of Earth's old covert divisions, long presumed disbanded. He'd scanned the visor from her helmet, extracting encrypted data logs. The file spoke of a unit codenamed Aegis Red, a black cell assembled not by the Crocs or Narum, but by a Terran command structure he didn't recognize. Human fonts, human code, but not under the unified Galactic Legion's banner. She stirred. Kai reached into his ration pack and placed a hydration capsule into her palm. She blinked, then took it without a word, chewing slowly as color returned to her cheeks. "Name?" he asked, voice low. She hesitated. "Captain Runvale." He nodded. "You were tracking me. I was hunting an anomaly. I didn't expect it to be human." Kai leaned back against the bark, rifle still across his lap. "You didn't expect someone like me to exist." Rin sat up slowly, wincing. There aren't supposed to be any UGL snipers deployed in this sector. The data said this quadrant was lost. Written off. "That's the point," he replied. "It was written off so they wouldn't look too closely." She studied him. "So what are you then? A rogue agent? A relic?" Kai's eyes narrowed. "I'm the only one left who remembers why this war started." Ren's brow furrowed. "The Crocs initiated first strike. Everyone knows that." "No," he said. "The Crocs retaliated. After Earth fired on a peace envoy. It was covered up. UGL fabricated a narrative. People like me, people who knew, were either buried or sent to sectors meant to kill them." Her face paled further. "That's not in any records." "Because you're part of the second cycle," he replied. "Trained by the new doctrine. Fight for the mission. Don't question the roots." She said nothing, but something in her posture changed. A slow unraveling of certainty. Kai stood and scanned the tree line. Dawn had begun to press against the horizon, bleeding cold light across the snow. They had to move. This area was burned. The enemy would return. He offered her a hand. Rin took it. They moved together across the ridge, every step laced with caution. Kai knew the land by feel. She followed, limping slightly, yet agile enough to keep up. Occasionally she would glance at him, not with fear, but with calculation. A reassessment. They reached a narrow pass just after sunrise, where a comms beacon had been buried beneath the roots of a frost pine tree. Kai dug it out and activated it with a secure sequence. The encrypted signal pulsed twice. A response would take time, if it came at all. Rin knelt beside him. "What happens now?" "I send the data you carried to someone who can expose it," he said. "If I'm lucky, it sparks a chain reaction. Truth leaks. War falters. And if you're wrong, then I die knowing I wasn't complicit." Her jaw clenched. "You think that's enough?" "No," he admitted, "but it's a start." An alert chimed from a beacon. Signal received. Handshake confirmed. The response was brief. "Extraction en route. ETA, 42 minutes. Hold position." Kai's stomach sank. That wasn't one of his frequencies. He checked the source. UGL command. Impossible. No one at command knew this beacon's location. He looked at Run. Her face had gone stiff. "Cold. You tagged it," he said quietly. "No," she said. "I didn't." But the betrayal was already in motion. From the ridge behind them, a series of shimmer fields broke apart. UGL strike troopers descending in tight formation, weapons raised. Kai's instincts flared. He shoved Rin aside as the first stun round fired. He rolled and returned fire, not to kill, but to scatter. His bullet hit a trooper's gun, sending it spinning into the snow. Another shot cracked a visor. The formation broke for a split second. It was enough. He dragged Rin behind a boulder and hissed, "They tracked your biosignature. You were compromised before I ever found you." She looked stunned. "I didn't know. I swear." "Doesn't matter," he snapped. "They're here for me." She pulled a compact pistol from her boot, cocked it. "Then we fight. You're not their target." "Doesn't matter." They fought side by side, measured, efficient, an unlikely partnership forged under siege. Troopers advanced with precision, but Kai's positioning turned their advantage into attrition. Every shot he took clipped armor or disarmed without killing. He was sending a message. He could kill. He chose not to. Rin mirrored him, firing only when needed, watching his angles. 20 minutes passed. Reinforcements didn't arrive. The troopers pulled back, retreating behind visual scramblers. Kai didn't chase. He knelt behind a felled trunk, rifle against his knee, breath ragged. Rin sat beside him, Helmet cracked, a smear of blood on her cheek. They were quiet. Then she said, "Why didn't they kill us?" "They wanted to capture," he replied. "Interrogate. Control the narrative. I'm more useful as a myth than a martyr." She looked away. "Then we're both loose ends now." Kai nodded. "Welcome to the fringe." The beacon blinked. Another signal. This one clean. From a frequency he hadn't seen in years. Sniper 1 confirmed status. Package retrieved. His throat caught. "Who is it?" Ren asked. Kai hesitated, then answered. "An old contact. Off-grid. Not UGL. Not enemy." She looked at him. "Can they be trusted?" He gave a grim smile. "No, but they know the truth. And they want out." She exhaled. "Then what's the next move?" He stood, slung his rifle. "We disappear. We leak what we have. We let the war choke on its own lies." Run rose beside him, her breath frosting in the air. "You think anyone will believe us?" "Maybe not," Kai said. "But once doubt starts, it spreads." They moved together into the forest, no longer hunter and hunted, no longer agent and target, but something else. Survivors. Witnesses. Symbols. Behind them, the snow swallowed their tracks. Ahead, the world waited to remember. And somewhere beyond the reach of scanners and strategy, fear crept back into the hearts of those who once laughed at the lone human sniper. Because now they knew he wasn't alone.